Hello and welcome to probably a really short video, just a little update. My copy of the perfect edition of Soul Eater finally arrived, and I'm just going to go over the changes I've noticed in the translation. Overall, it is basically the same script, they've just fixed mistakes. And I like that because, honestly, when it says revised translation, sometimes you get a bit worried, like what happened with, for example, the Kingdom Hearts mangas. They keep getting re-released every couple of years under a new publisher, and they have to revise the translation, in quotes, which means basically we can't use any work the previous publisher has done because of copyright. And sometimes it does lead to strange lines, because if you're retranslating it from scratch as a different person, naturally most of the lines are going to end up being different, but if you have a really simple line when there's only really one way to possibly interpret that, what else can you do except to, like, rephrase it with crazy synonyms or super long, or add the word you know on the end, or filler bits like that? It leads to some really clunky, strange lines in the middle of conversations, and I noticed that a lot in Kingdom Hearts in particular, and I think that's probably the cause. It's so noticeable when the rest of the conversation is completely casual and just one really crammed text box. So anyway, because this is a re-release by the same company just fixing their work, it looks exactly like that and it's great. Also, it's overwhelmingly better quality for the art. It actually makes me feel really fucking salty that the only version available on digital download is the old bad translation, which also now I know has the old bad art. The resolution immediately just slams you in the face. It looks so much better than looking at the whole thing on a massive monitor, the Kindle version. Like, come on. On the off chance that manga publishers just happen to be watching my video, please re-release this one digitally. I will buy it a second time. Like, the whole appeal of having a digital version of a book is like, here you go, maximum resolution, perfect quality, resizable version of the art, and with this series you just don't get that. You get the cruddy one if you buy online, you get the good one if you buy physical. Who could ever predict that? Oh, and the Perfect Edition also only comes in hardback, which makes it a little hard to scan these images in to compare them for you. So now I will do that. Chapter 1 had the most actual changes. Okay, first off, they did indeed fix exactly the thing I complained about. They no longer insist on calling him Shinigami-sama, and they also added in the exact dub flourish I liked explaining a number with a nursery rhyme. However, fascinatingly, a lot of other changes were not made. Just off the top of the head, all the odd lines I noticed that were still the same. Sol still calls Maka a shorty instead of saying she's flat-chested. Still a weird line about Maka saying she made Sol and she's his owner. And later on, Def the Kid saying he makes art rather than just appreciates it. I guess this means all these things must actually be accurate differences in the Japanese version, or they were just considered not important enough to change. One thing I noticed, which I have to retroactively take back a bit of praise I gave in the previous episode. This is in fact not a manga change. They don't keep it secret that Maka's father is the Death Scythe until a dramatic moment to reveal it. When he first appears, there's just a text box saying it. They specifically don't even say his actual name, they only say he is Lord Death's Death Scythe. And the reason I didn't notice that in the original read-through is the font is just really bad against his legs. I didn't even notice there was a text box at all. And this is also a great sign of just how much the quality is lowered. Like, you guys will not be seeing exactly how great the quality is in this printing through my video, because obviously the YouTube compression will have made it look worse. And I don't even have a particularly good scanner. But trust me, it's like night and day. Looking at this now is like I'm looking through a blur filter. It's like I'm not wearing my glasses, but I am. There is a new and cooler font for everyone's move names, and I really like it, but I don't like how it was implemented the first time you see it here. They changed the phrasing of the name to be sideways, which is obviously how it would be read in Japanese, but obviously in Japanese it's read from right to left, and you, as a reader of a manga, are used to reading it that way. For the move name, they've put the actual order of it left to right, even though the page is right to left. I cannot read as anything other than Canon Halloween. For comparison, here is what it originally looked like, readable for an English audience. But I can understand if they made the font bigger, it might not fit anymore. And then we get to a fascinating difference. Blair's little hat guy has completely changed names from Zukun to Zwan, and I was curious about that, so I went and looked up on the wiki. I gotta say, the wiki had made it really hard to understand what was going on here. Zukun, known as Zwan, Zuan in Japanese, in Funimation, is the name. It took me a lot of times reading that to figure out what it was actually intending to say. Like, is it saying Zukun is the original name in the manga, and it was changed to Zuan in the anime in Japanese, and then Zwan in only the Funimation dub the anime, because it's not. In the dub of the anime, they don't say the name at all. It is, in fact, the new translation of the manga which says Swan. And also, Swan is the original Japanese name. That's what's actually going on here. Zukun was just a mistake in the first manga translation. The original name was always Zuan, but spelled that way in katakana. But it's just the Japanese way of saying the name Zwan, which is an actual thing. And if you go and look over on how you actually do spell Zwan and Zukun, it's a very easily understandable mistake. Like, in this font that Google Translate happens to use, the middle character is a lot more distinguishable, but you can easily see how in a different font, you could mix those up. When I've recently been playing J-Cocoon 2, that game does have a font where these two characters do look very similar, so I'm imagining the original Japanese version of Soul Eater might have used something similar. So props to the new translation for realising this mistake and fixing it, because it was actually a band reference. I didn't mention this in my review because it's random trivia that wasn't really relevant, but all of Blair's attacks are puns on the Smashing Pumpkins, which is a band. And Zwan is a band formed by several people who left the Smashing Pumpkins, so it's definitely an intentional reference. There is no way this would have happened purely by coincidence, but it's also totally understandable how a translator wouldn't know that, unless they had extensive knowledge of the exact history of the Smashing Pumpkins. Another recurring edit we'll see in every chapter is the previous release. Whenever there was anything handwritten in Japanese, they would just not translate it at all. They would put a little translator's note underneath, this is what it means, which is really clunky and awkward. In this release, we actually have translated letters. I'm not sure exactly why that used to be a translation rule. I guess maybe someone cosmically thought, like, oh, I'm preserving the original intent of the handwriting, but I don't think that's the correct situation to use. Like, I can understand if it's like, oh, I didn't translate the sound effects because they're very big, bombastic, uniquely drawn things with an intent behind them. But when it's just a regular piece of paper with regular handwriting on it, and there's nothing in particular conveyed about any specific font of the handwriting, I'm just like, cut your losses, do what's easiest, do what actually makes sense. Perfect Edition exclusive feature, coloured version of the ass pose. I still have no idea what this is supposed to be. And it also baffled me how the bad joke was still left as stop with the joke, you bloke. And I got so curious, I spent over an hour trying to track down the only available legal way to purchase the Japanese version of the manga in English, which is bookwalker.jp if anyone else happens to be curious. And it was all for nothing because Google Translate could not handle the font they were using, and it makes even less sense. I finally found it! The wiki actually lists the differences in the puns. I didn't even think to look there because I just didn't think this would be something anyone except me would get obsessed about. So thank you whoever made this particular wiki page edit for being exactly on my wavelength. The original pun is him indeed saying stop with the joke, but there's no you bloke on the end. It seems that the manga tried to go for a more literal translation of the pun that was the best they could do, just having a random rhyming word be in there, versus the anime was like, there is no way we can translate this in English, we're going to make up something totally different. The joke here in Japanese is Black Star mispronounces the word stop, so it also sounds like joke. So it's basically kind of like joke with the jokes. And it's not funny in either language, and it's also not something you can say in English. And I guess we'll just have to settle for it being an even worse joke in our translation, but it was already a very terrible one to begin with. Oh, and also I found a clip to compare from the anime.
You know how I'll respond to any more of these little jokes of yours, Tsubaki? By making a big joke of my own! You'll laugh so much you'll be the falling star!
That wasn't a big joke.
Get it? 'Cause you'll laugh so hard you'll fall down?
Yeah, it's just a completely different joke, and it also sucks, but they made more of a pun on his name instead. In a way that sucks. In all possible universes, in every translation, this line is terrible, but in unique and interesting ways. Black Star's Super Mega Big Wave really benefits from the new font for moves. That looks so much better. Oh, one bad change. I have no idea why they decided to change Angela to also speak in Uwu speak. Both her and Patty, I don't get it. This is not a liked thing. It's in fact a very infamously disliked thing that people just don't want to have in translations. There are ways to convey a childish voice without this literal 9,000% over the top stereotype. I also don't like this weird rephrase of one particular line. He's almost too much of a perfectionist and pathologically persnickety. Is there any particular reason it had to become alliteration? Was it a really silly line in Japanese and like the previous English translation making it just make sense was inaccurate? Because, yeah, originally it was just, he has an unhealthily uptight temperament, which I guess is a little bit clunky. You could have just said, but he's unhealthily uptight. Either way, it's fine. I don't know, sometimes you gotta know where to draw the line, like putting a bit of a flourish on the translation. I'm okay with changing the literal words that are used, but like it conveys more information, it suits the scene more, it gets across the same impression in English. But when it's the opposite, it's like, why insert a joke when there wasn't a joke before? I mean, obviously the joke is just the twist that he is a perfectionist, he does have OCD, but like, that's still in both versions regardless of how you phrase it. This just makes it a little harder to understand the punchline because, I mean, you have to know what persnickety means. Also, I felt sad. The one line I went off on a big ramble about, oh, this is so much better in the manga, is now gone, which I guess means that the previous version must have been a mistake. They accidentally gave more character development. In this version, Kid is just like, you're complimenting me on exactly the same thing that irks me. In the other version, it was like, there's no need to compliment me on the thing that makes me upset, and it was implied he was saying, like, Dad, you're trying to cheer me up in a patronising way. You don't get that impression at all from this phrasing. It's just a pure joke that his dad likes the thing he hates. And I feel it just gives so much less depth to the character. I just go back to my initial assessment, which is, why does Kid hate his dad being nice? It's unrelatable, it's awkward, it's just a pointless joke. There is way more justification for why he would dislike that if the idea is like, not just by sheer coincidence Lord Death happens to like a thing that Kid hates. It's Lord Death is intentionally pretending to like the thing to compliment Kid on the thing he hates because he's like, I can fix my son's confidence issues by saying this. It's a very shallow misinterpretation of what's going on, but you can get it, there's a good intent behind it, and you go, oh yeah, that makes sense why Kid might be distant from him if his dad is always like this. No, it just wasn't there. That sucks. That really sucks. I gotta say, like, props to the first translator for trying to make a better manga. But also, like, if it's not accurate, you can't really in that job write in new stuff that changes scenes to make them better, because inevitably all the rest of the chapters aren't going to fit the continuity of that if it was never intended. But damn! And they translated Death's letter, and he does not have bad handwriting in the English version, just kind of regular font. Which does make me wonder, like, was it not meant to look bad in the original Japanese? Is that just, like, the author's actual handwriting doesn't seem to look as fancy as it would fit the character? And then ending on the last thing I notice is this weird panel, and this one only panel, either Liz or Patty is calling Kid Kiddo instead, and I checked that up on the original translation, and it is instead Kid-kun, which I don't think Kiddo is a particularly good translation of that trait. I also think it's not good to just leave the honorifics in for no reason when it's not really a thing as specific. You'd only understand if the honorifics were there. Like in this situation, it's just meant to be, oh, one of the twins talks about him more formally, one of them talks more casually. I feel like you could have conveyed that better with, like, change the other one. Like, one of them calls him Sir Kid, Lord Kid, Mr. Kid, Young Master instead of his name, or something like that. Because Kiddo sounds like 10 leagues more affectionate than Kid-kun does. Kun as an ending for a male name, that's like the average normal one, that's just young boy. I think Kiddo to me sounds more like if it was like Kid-chan or something. Oh, and then editing, and one thing I missed in an earlier panel is, I have no idea why they changed the way they delivered the names of the sisters. In this translation, it doesn't say their surnames. In the previous translation, it did. It gives the full information, they are the Thompson sisters, and then also says Patty Thompson and Liz Thompson. I have no idea why the surname specifically has been removed here. I don't think that's in any way plot important to not say. Like, it is indeed true that we don't learn the backstory of the Thompson sisters until later in the series, but just knowing that their name is the Thompson sisters doesn't really reveal any of that. I don't get it. Oh, and I've got to check if it's like that in the Japanese version. Give me a sec. Oh, while I'm at it, while I'm checking, it turns out the new font for the move names is accurate to the Japanese font for the move names. Great choice. Nope, Japanese version does give their full name including the surname. It very clearly says Thompson, Thompson, Thompson. Why did you change that in the supposedly more accurate translation? Now this one did translate in Goog. He indeed does not say he's an artist in Japanese. He says, my aesthetic, not my art. I think that's where the mistranslation came in. And then one last thing I checked on the really cool wiki. It's a shame that not every single chapter has an equally extensive selection of things that change between the anime and manga. Otherwise, I was going to say, oh, maybe my videos have no point then if there's just a place where you can read this all. But no, the chapter 1 for some reason barely had anything in this section. So, they're still worth me myself using my eyes. Speaking of which, there is indeed an adaptation-exclusive conversation about eyes. Every single version changes the joke. Original chapter, this joke, what if your eyes got crushed like grapes every time you closed them? Japanese version of the anime, apparently, it may be because of censorship, changed it. Instead, she just goes, oh, do your eyes stop working when you blink? In the Japanese version of the anime, I actually went and watched the scene because I didn't really understand it from how it's explained here. Patty is basically like, well, how would you know if your eyes stop working entirely when you close them? Or if you are still seeing, you're just seeing the black on the inside of your eyes? Which is like, not really as funny, because that's a genuine kind of riddle you could actually say in real life and actually think of an answer to. It doesn't make it come off as completely insane, just like, yeah, now you've mentioned that, now I want to know. And then as we've seen, the English dub of the anime goes, if you sneeze, your eyes will pop out. So my perception of, like, the differences between those three, my idea is, what if the original Japanese anime had to censor it because the original joke was considered too violent? And then it made the joke not as funny, so when the anime translators came along, they, like, looked at the original manga translation version and were like, how can we change the joke to be more like that, to be still a bit gross, while not actually being too gross to be allowed on TV? And I would say they succeed. Having your eyes just pop out like in a cartoon is the perfect compromise of exactly disgusting enough. Oh, and to end this off, a brief correction on one thing I got wrong in a previous episode. I said I thought, vaguely remembering, that the prologue chapters, these 3 one-shots came out 1 year before the serialization. It is in fact half a year before the serialization. The wiki doesn't have an exact date for when the final one-shot came out, it just says autumn 2003, and then the main series started in May 2004. That is the end of my Soul Eater blab at last. And please tell me if you want more.